premise of today is we're going to be discussing core confidence. So we're joined again by the legendary David Essel. I'm so grateful for David's time. Really enjoyed the first interview, and I generally feel like I learned a lot. I rewatched the other one so many times. So today talking about core confidence and maybe the first steps of learning to love ourselves as well. So I don't know what angle you want to go at with this, David, but I think it's a nice transition from the last video where we talked about the kind of origins of codependency and the tendencies. How do we actually begin to love ourselves? Because a lot of people kind of throw it out there, you just need to love yourself, and it becomes almost like a cliche. And especially if you're coming from a place where you do have a lot of maybe self-hatred, what do we do to get it all going and begin loving ourselves?
Josh, it's a great question. You know, self-love is very difficult. People talk about it like you say. They flippantly use it. Oh, I love myself so much. And, you know, do you really love yourself? Yes, I do. And so the very first thing we do with clients is that we say to them, write down all the areas of life. So you'd write down your health, your finances, relationships, friendships, social activities, etc. And then next to it, write if you have any negative habits or bad habits in those areas. Now, an individual with a lot of self-love is going to find out that they don't have many negative habits at all. Like, that's self-love, you know? Like, we take, Josh, as you know, we take self-love to another level. We don't talk about it from this mind point of view. We say, prove it. Prove that you love yourself, you know? And the really easy way to do it is this exercise I just gave. So if you write down next to your health that you're overweight, that you eat sugar too much or drink too much or whatever it might be, then that's a lack of self-love. Yeah. Right away, we could say, I don't love the temple that's my body. You know, I have a great story from a mentor of mine who passed away last year, Ram Dass. Ram Dass was one of the greatest spiritual teachers that ever walked this earth. But for years, he used to have a statement that I never agreed with, even though he taught me a ton and I loved him to death. He always made a statement, Josh, and he would say, I am not my body. I am a spiritual being, having a physical experience, but I'm not my body. So that sounds really good. You know, it sounds really philosophical and all that other kind of crap. Every year his doctor would say, you know, Ram Dass, we have to watch it. Your weight's going up, your cholesterol's going up, your blood sugar levels are going up. And his response was, Doc, thanks for all the information, but unlike you, I'm not my body. I am, you know, going to this whole dance, right? Unfortunately, his body caught up with him. And in 1999, he had one of the worst strokes that you could ever have. He was bedridden 24/7. He needed medical care. He had to be carried to the bathroom. He had no ability to function at all. And it was in that year that he woke up and realized that one of his teachings was completely wrong. That's the opposite of self-love. The opposite of self-love is abusing your body, being overweight, high blood sugar levels, high cholesterol levels. You can say all the crap you want, Josh, about how you're not a human being, you're a spiritual being having a human experience, which you can make up any excuses you want. But it's going to come down to, how do you treat your body, number one. Number two, how do you treat your finances? Someone who is filled with self-love is going to respect their money. They're not going to buy crap they don't need. Look in your closet. See how many pair of jeans you have. See how many pair of shoes you have. See how many purses you have. See how many workout clothes you have. You know, and a lot of us, we buy crap because it makes us feel better in the moment. But that's the opposite of self-love. If you go into someone's house that really love themselves, you're going to find a minimalistic experience. You're not going to find, you know, like I had a client in LA, Los Angeles, and, you know, she was really struggling in life. And so I said to her, well, let's start by clearing out the clutter in your house. You know, what's it like? And she said, oh my God, you'd never want to come in here. And I said, well, I live in Florida, so there's no chance of that happening, but go ahead and tell me, you know. And she had like 40 purses. She had 100 pair of beach sandals. 100.
Wow.
She had like 30 pairs of heels. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? So she kept buying things to try to make her feel better, which is the opposite of self-love.
Yeah.
Then let's go into what we talked about last time, Josh, codependency. If you're in a relationship and you can't stand up to that person and be open and honest, then you lack self-love.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of rocking the boat, you lack self-love. Let's go to career. If you're working in a career you hate you're lacking self-love.
Yeah.
Because people that love themselves wouldn't stay in a career they hated. They may take 4 jobs, part-time jobs, in order to equal the salary of where they are that they hate. And you can find 4 or 2 or 3 part-time jobs you might love and make the same amount of money, and that would be self-love. So, in essence, Josh, self-love is all about how we treat ourselves and how we treat others. It's not what we think, and I think one of the reasons I'm on this earth is to dispel that nonsense, that your beliefs are so powerful. So according to many teachers, if you really believe you love yourself, you will love yourself. And that's a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm a former alcoholic and cocaine addict. That's the exact opposite end of self-love.
Yeah.
And I can admit that right now and say, no, I wasn't loving myself at all. I mean, partially, maybe, but not with addiction.
Love that, yeah. I think I remember seeing something on one of your videos once, and you were saying about the blocks to self-love and independence, and one of the things you did mention was any kind of addiction. In terms of codependency addiction, why does it wreak so much havoc on our confidence? It does appear that with especially with my own experience with it, I definitely feel as though I've grown so much in actually stabilising my self-esteem. It's not in this constant fluctuation and these extreme oscillations back and forth. I find that it's more stable now because I'm not so extrinsigently dependent on something to make me feel good. And totally testify what you said about being a minimalist. Interestingly, you say that because literally today I got myself a guitar, and I haven't got a guitar since I was about 19 years old. I'm 28 now. And to me, as much as I generally love what you said there, David, to me that was a massive, massive thing because I had so much guilt around buying things for myself and all this guilt around money. And I am very minimalistic in nature. But even just getting that is just a one-off thing. It meant so much to me, honestly. So in terms of codependency addiction, how come it does put so much havoc and so much kind of fluctuation in our confidence specifically?
Well, and the answer to that, Joshua, is because the foundation of codependency is low self-confidence and low self-esteem. So if a person has high self-confidence and high self-esteem from the ages of 0 to 18, the chances of them becoming codependent with relationships or bosses or coworkers or neighbors or family members is very small because they were raised with an ability to go above and beyond codependency, and they don't really care if people agree with them, like them, love them. They're on this planet to do their own thing. They're not rude or arrogant. No. But, if you treat them inappropriately, don't be surprised if the independent person vanishes somehow from your life, because they're just not going to put up with the crowd.
Yeah.
Now, the rest of us who are codependent, including myself before I went through massive training, we can't even see that we have low self-confidence. Like a lot of times we give ourselves that notion that we're a very confident person and, we say the right words to ourselves.
Yeah. But
then we let people manipulate us. We might do passive-aggressive behavior with family or friends. We avoid confrontation, which is a sign of a lack of confidence. Now, even people that have high confidence, they may not like confrontation, but they go right into it. They go, I'm not going to procrastinate because that's going to create hell. I'm not going to delay it because that's going to create more problems down the future. Let's have the conversation. Let's talk about this. And that's someone who has high self-confidence, and obviously they don't suffer from codependency. Yeah. So what we say to people is if you are codependent and you have low self-confidence and low self-esteem, the only step to begin is with, and I'd say a small step, but that would be to write about the people that you have in your life that are not healthy for you. Like this would be exercise number 1 to start to boost our confidence. So let's say you write down and you have 6 people you interact with on a weekly basis, and let's say 2 or 3 of them aren't good influencers, aren't good role models. They're always calling and bitching, complaining, or they're gossiping about stuff, and so a person that wants to start to build their confidence is going to start to remove themselves from that relationship. Now, it may be that they start by saying that, they're available to talk to their friend on Friday at noon instead of Monday through Friday at noon. they start to pull back because they realize that this person's bringing a ton of negativity to them. Now, this is a very scary thing to do for the codependent. We're petrified of having anyone upset with us. So normally we keep those people in our circle. And what we share with our clients, Joshua, is that, listen, you can still have them in your circle, but have them 10% of the time instead of 90. And that would be the first step towards boosting confidence.
Yeah, love that. It's such a critical thing, isn't it? Like being able to filter through our own social circle and weeding out people who really aren't supporting our values and who we are. And there's many times that you just described before, the vanishing act or the disappearing act, where someone's messaged me and said, I can't find you on Facebook anymore. But that first step was so difficult. For myself, I found that so difficult. I don't know if it was a fear of abandonment or being alone, potentially. Do you feel as though that actually keeps codependents locked in these very quite harmful and quite toxic relationships, that fear of loneliness or being on their own and having to deal with their quite corrosive and toxic feelings?
Yeah, and the problem that codependents see is because they have low self-confidence and low self-esteem is self-love. Mm-hmm. So because they have lower amounts of self-love and self-confidence, doing anything other than what they're doing right now scares the heck out of them. Yeah. The chance that someone might criticize them, the chance that someone might emotionally leave, like you said, abandonment, emotionally or physically leave them, scares the heck out of the codependent. And because we don't have that high level of confidence, we walk on eggshells constantly around most people. One of the things we've seen is that a lot of codependents really walk on eggshells around family members. Mm-hmm. That is the most difficult place in the world to be independent. If you're raised in a codependent household, which most people are, to become independent means you're going to piss some people off in the family. You're just going to. Because let's say that, there's family reunions and every family, and I just went through this last night on the phone with a client. Every family reunion, there's certain members that drink like crazy. They get into arguments and fights. And so last weekend was the family reunion, and the client said to me, do you think I should go or not? And I'd say, I don't know what's right for you, but here's the exercise. Write down what happened with the last 3 family reunions that you went to. And then make a decision if that's where you want to be. and the last 3 years, every time it turned into hell. And so she just sent an email to everyone saying, because of work obligations, which was not a lie, she had a lot of work to do that she could have done on another time, but she said, I'm going to be working all weekend, which she did. Yeah. And I'm going to miss the family reunion. She got hell, Joshua. She got so much negative pushback that it almost cracked her to make her go to the reunion. And we talked and we talked and we talked, and I said, listen, the choice is always yours, but if you want to shatter this codependent nature, if you give in right now, you will never have a chance to be this strong again. And they're not going to respect you. And when you try to do it next year, they're going to come down on you harder because they beat you to a pulp this year and you gave in. Yeah. And so, there are people that go through training, Josh, that end up not talking to their family for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's not abnormal. Yeah. And, there's a statement in the United States that I think is a bunch of crap, and it says, blood is thicker than water. It's used all over the world in different ways, but what it means is that your family is your family. You should never let them down. You should never leave them. You should put up with their crap, is what that statement says. And what we say is family members are just freaking human beings, and they can be dicks. Yeah. And they can be idiots. So if you happen to be born into a family of idiots, for you to remove yourself from it is the only healthy move you can have. Yeah. And then down the road, Josh, if you're able to mend bridges, that's fine. But if it's addiction, if it's emotional abuse, if it's physical abuse, get the hell out of your family. Yeah. And that takes a lot of confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for sharing that, David, as well. Fantastic. In terms of that, I do feel as though in some aspects of my own family system, I feel as though because that has partially created my codependent tendencies, to go back, you slowly, just ever so slightly, want to slip into it a little bit easier because it feels comfortable. And massive credit to people who can do that away from their family, because it does take a lot of courage and a lot of strength. In terms of not just with the family, but with the social aspects of like peer groups. I know we mentioned before codependency at work, and then you talked about not rocking the boat, and also as well about with your client, this ability to kind of stand up to them the first time round. And I always remember these situations. It's almost like a fork in the road, isn't it? Where you have the overwhelming fear, like, oh, this is it. This is where you have to really start to declare your independence. But it does seem to get easier. It does appear to, like, it once you've got that kind of reference experience of going right one time, it does appear to boost your confidence a little bit more. So in a way, even though it is scary, it does lead to a bit of a better view at the end of the day. So we got that. I love that exercise. I remember actually listening to that in one of your other videos, writing down the people in your life. I did like a similar thing where I look at the people and look at in my life where I was so used to one-dimensional or one-sided relationships. In terms of with the codependent, why is it that they don't necessarily see that in real time, where someone from the outside goes, I don't think this is healthy? What's the kind of secret behind that, David?
Yeah, Joshua, the habits that we pick up, and most of the negative habits we pick up, are from 0 to 18. It could be that we see our uncle or our father or someone abusing alcohol or food. We see people being passive aggressive. We see people being codependent as hell in so many different families, and so that gets stored in the subconscious mind. And we can't see our own behavior. Like, when I wanted to heal myself from my own codependency, I couldn't see it as deep as a counselor could see it. The counselor looked at me and within 30 days had me nailed, and I was shocked when she told me I was the most codependent man she had ever met. I was shocked, Josh. And as a counselor, as a master life coach, and all the other crap I do, I couldn't see it at all. So what we need to do is we need to go in and speak to a professional, a therapist, a counselor, a relationship coach, and go through the relationships with them. This is the relationship with my mom growing up. This is the relationship with me and my mom now. This is my relationship with my dad growing up. This is what we're like now. My brothers, sisters, etc. And we go through that, and that simple exercise, when you're asked the right questions, Josh, can really expose that, you're codependent as hell with your mom, or you're codependent as hell with your dad. You're so afraid, again, going back to a session yesterday, one of my clients was so petrified of her father that he passed away a couple years ago. She would never talk back to him, would never go against his word, would never do anything because he was extremely abusive. He was an unbelievable bully. And she never found the strength to stand up to him. And today she suffers greatly in relationships because she unknowingly attracts the same type of men to date. Men that are aggressive, dominant, that it's their way or the highway. And she learned that growing up. So that got stored in her subconscious, Josh, and as we write about in all of our books, that becomes the norm. It doesn't mean it's healthy. It just means that that's how we're raised, that's what our belief systems are, and now she's got a huge battle ahead to let go of 50 years of codependency with her dad so she can start looking for a healthier man to date.
Wow. That is very powerful and very brave of her as well to do
that
recovery work. 100%. It's interesting. I find I can just see almost like a stepping stone effect with my own relationships, in my intimate relationships, especially now I've recently got engaged, which is amazing.
Oh, that's exciting! Yeah,
which is really cool. Really cool, and it's interesting looking back on it because I feel as though this is the healthiest relationship I've ever been in my life. And I think my girlfriend brings me so much balance, and it's interesting when I've looked at previous relationships, looking back on it now, it's been almost like a stepping stone effect of one relationship better into the next. And I feel as though I can say how I feel, and again, that it might cause conflicts, and we might get a bit upset, but me and my girlfriend do actively speak about that. We don't hide away from conflict and then it all comes out passive aggressively. So it was a massive milestone for myself. In terms of that, David, I've read about with codependency, they suffer, me included in this, we suffer a lot with the dysfunctional communication. You said about before not wanting to rock the boat, and then we end up covering up our truth essentially, in really weird ways, like you said, passive-aggressive behaviour. Is there any other examples, just so people know they might be actually doing some of these? Any kind of communication styles where they're not saying how they feel, what they want?
You know, when we isolate, instead of being honest with our partner, with our family members, with our friends, a lot of people will start to isolate, Josh. And that's a form of passive-aggressive behavior. Instead of coming out and saying what I really feel about you, I'm just not going to answer your texts. I'm not going to answer your calls. I'm not going to be available. And that's passive-aggressive. And that's where the codependent starts to isolate and pull away because they don't want to deal with the truth. Yeah. That this relationship sucks or that there's problems with it or something like that. You know, so that's a big move that a lot of people, you know, everyone has heard of the word ghosting. You know, when you ghost someone, you know, meaning that you just disappear from their life, a lot of people use that because they're cowards.
Yeah.
You know, like I work with a lot of people in the world of dating, and they'll be falling head over heels from some guy or some girl, and then all of a sudden that person disappears. And that's a person with really low self-esteem and self-confidence. You know, if you're going to ghost someone that says that you have, you know, no chutzpah at all, is that you're a very weak person. A very strong, independent person would actually send a final text or email or phone call and say, hey, listen, you know, I've really enjoyed the dates for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but I just don't feel that it's the match I'm looking for. And I wanted to just let you know so that we're all on the same table, and good luck moving forward.
Yeah.
That's all it would take. You know, that's what an independent person would do. A codependent person goes, oh, I don't want to deal with their pushback. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to feel guilty if they push back and say, I've fallen so in love with you. How can you do this? The codependent doesn't want to deal with anything. So they'll isolate, they'll remove themselves, and they'll start using ghosting techniques so they don't have to deal with conflict.
Yeah. How much better the world would be if people actually just did that in such a polite manner and just said, like, I'm not really feeling this. Working as a personal trainer, like, the amount of times where a client will just randomly disappear into the abyss, and I'd just be like, if they just said, you know, just I'm not really feeling this right now, and just been really honest, how much more I would appreciate it, and vice versa with anything else with me with other people. Definitely, no. I think more so when I was younger, I would hide away from it. And I think there's a difference as well from, you know, not actively seeking conflict, but then not hiding away from it as well. So, yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of other activities we can do to actually boost our self-esteem, David, I know you mentioned a few at the start, finances and money. Maybe looking at more so money, what would be one thing we could do with money to help raise our self-esteem?
So, and when we remember that self-esteem is self-love, we would probably start off by creating a budget, which no one wants to do. You know, like no one wants to know where their money's going. They don't want to know they're spending it poorly, but that would be a sign of self-love. Yeah. I'm going to see what money I bring in on a monthly basis. I'm going to add up all my expenses, and I'm going to see where I am in regards to my income and expenses. Now, you know, another story, a couple years ago, I worked with a young woman, and she was only making $3,000 a month, which is $36,000 a year. And at the end of every month, she had exactly $100 left over. So she was making $3,000 a month, and she was spending $2,900, right? So she had $100 left over every month, and it was killing her. So she came in, and I started talking to her about, well, you know, what's your budget? What do you put aside for food, for rent, for all this? And she said, oh, my God, I've never done anything like that. So we did, Josh, right? And she was petrified. She didn't want to see the numbers. So the very first thing she saw when she only had $100 every month left over is she dropped her jaw. And she goes, oh, my God, I can't believe. I knew I never had money. I didn't know it was that bad. Then we started going through her expenses. And within a very short time, we saw that she was spending $400 a month more on groceries than she needed. And then we saw that her car payment, it was a brand new car, and I looked at the payment and I said, that's way too high. What's your interest rate? She had bought a brand new car at 10% interest, which means the dealer screwed her over. Oh, man. And I got her to go to her bank, and the bank gave her a 2% interest loan. So she saved over $150 a month just with that one move. So if you remember the groceries, she saved $400 a month with the groceries. Then she saved $150 a month with a car payment that was way too high. And we started going down, and we looked at her clothing that she would buy on a monthly basis, and we eliminated it completely. because she had plenty of clothes. At the end of our work together, she was saving $1,000 a month.
Wow.
When before she only had $100. And that's a sign of self-love. Now, I'm going to tell you, she wasn't necessarily happy with all the changes at first because she had to really start watching her money. But within 3 months, I got a text from her saying, David, this was the most incredible thing I've ever done. My stress is down. I feel so much better. Wait to hear this, Josh. She goes, I feel so much better about myself. She goes, as a matter of fact, every Friday night, I teach 3 of my girlfriends what you taught me. And now they're all changing their financial situation.
Wow. So,
it's a cool thing. But listen, if we want self-love, it probably means there's going to be some sacrifice in the beginning.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, it isn't all. I think a lot of people on YouTube usually glorify self-love as this kind of. They kind of do a lot of spiritualizing of self-love and make it seem like, oh, just as long as you love yourself and we live in the land of love and dreams and ponies, it'll be absolutely fine. But there is actually, like you mentioned, well, you mentioned it about sacrifice. It is actually takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery, I think, to really, really love ourselves. And I'm constantly asking myself, I don't know if you've ever heard this gentleman called Jim Quick before, David.
No, I haven't.
I really recommend this stuff. He's basically like I think he's a mind performance coach, his title is, and he does a lot of stuff on memory and like speed reading and stuff like this. And he was saying about something about your dominant question. And he was saying that everyone has a dominant question on a moment-to-moment basis they ask themselves. And I do feel one of mine, at least one of them is, what can I do in this moment to love myself even more? Because I find myself, if I don't kind of check in with myself and have that as like a organizational principle, that I can just, so easy to fall back into bad habits, isn't it? And then just, you realize all of a sudden, oh God, I've attracted all these crazy people into my life, and it's just like, oh God, yeah. But no, yeah, and it's interesting, just keeping that as a dominant question. Is it anything like that with yourself, David? Like not just with your clients, but with yourself, where you check in with yourself, like any questions you ask yourself or anything like that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we teach a technique that I do every day. It's called the 4x4 journaling technique, Josh. And this is a check-in every day. We have all of our clients doing it last thing in the evening. They write 4 things that they're grateful for that day. So 4 things that happened that they're really happy about. As a matter of fact, tonight when I write mine, my iPhone died yesterday. I took it to a shop. They fixed it. It died again within an hour. I went back 3 times today to the shop, wow. And we finally got it fixed, right? Like this was a major, major thing for me because most of us live off of our phones. It's incredible. So now, when we talk about self-love, it was like I could have gotten very upset yesterday because they didn't fix it right. They put the wrong part in. Then they put another part in that was malfunctioning. And then they never checked the battery, right? I can go through a list of all this different stuff. Or I can say, I am so filled with gratitude today that my phone is finally fixed. And that's a perspective. That's like everyone has that option. I'm not the only one that has it. So at the end of every day, I write down 4 things I'm grateful for. So the first one today is I got my iPhone fixed. Like I am just happy as can be, right? And then the second half of it, Josh, is we write the 4 things that we're frustrated with or challenged by. And you see, this is that check-in, So when I work with my codependent clients, one of the things they'll put is, I gave in and I said yes to going out to drinking with my buddy Jim when I told myself and David I wasn't going to drink again. So that's a check-in, right? I said I wasn't going to spend over X amount of dollars on clothing on a monthly basis, and I doubled my expenditure. I'm not happy with myself. So we do that check-in, and it's the yin-yang approach to life. Let's look at what we're doing well, that we're happy with. That boosts self-confidence and self-esteem. And then let's look at what we're challenged by. When you see it in writing, you have 2 choices, if you're honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You can either write the same thing tomorrow and the same thing the next day, or you can do the work.
Yeah. And it's almost like I find with all the stuff you're saying, David, it's so true. Like the amount of times where It's almost a very equalizing emotion, gratitude, isn't it? Like, it's very difficult to be extremely, extremely angry and very, very grateful at the same time. So, yeah, and congrats on your phone, by the way. That's amazing. Literally, the amount of scenarios I find myself in where, like, that has happened. Like, the equivalent was the washing machine. I was kept on putting off my washing, and the moment when I got it done, the washing machine door stuck, and I was just like, oh god. But I did remind myself that I have a washing machine, and then I was grateful for that. So yeah. Last little bit, David, just to wrap it up. Is there any example when you've been in a confrontation with someone, like just personally, and you felt very anxious and you didn't know how it was going to go, but it worked in your favour eventually? Could you maybe give us an example of that?
You know, whenever we're going to have an important conversation and we're feeling high anxiety, I think we have to ask ourselves why. You know, are we afraid of being rejected? Are we afraid of being scolded, criticized? Are we afraid of being abandoned? Like, what's the fear? You know, now, there are some conversations that are harder to have than others with all of us, and we know that. But if there's one that's creating a lot of anxiety, I would want someone to write down prior to going into the meeting, what's creating that anxiety? Like, just create a list, because logically, Josh, if we say they might leave me, they may criticize me deeply, they may get really angry, I would look at that and go, okay, well, those are okay reasons to be anxious. In other words, you know, give yourself a break. If you're doing stuff that's new and you're not used to it, you will feel anxious. And you know, as a personal story, when I was a little kid, 8 years old, I started going to parks to play basketball as a basketball freak. And I wanted to play in the NBA. I wanted to be a pro. And I knew that in order for me to do that, now this was around 13 or so, that I had to start playing with people better than me. And that meant going to neighborhoods where there were black players, because the black players were incredibly gifted and talented where I was from. Now, I was nervous as hell, Josh. You know, I was scared as could be. And yet, by constantly going into my fear, I ended up playing at a major university for 2 years, and I will tell you this, if I hadn't played against people that were so much better than me, I never would have improved enough to play at Syracuse University, which is one of the top universities in the United States in regards to basketball. So, you know, walking into your fear and feeling anxious is okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's a message I want people to hear. It's okay to be anxious. Keep moving forward, because the more you do it, the anxiety will start to lessen.
Brilliant. Love that, David. Love that. And also, if people didn't see the other video, which I highly recommend people watch, because David's absolutely brilliant. Is there any way people, if they have a question for you, anything like that, David, that people can get a hold of you and ask you any advice on what we've talked about today?
Yeah, Josh, the website's so easy. It's talkdavid.com. So just go to talkdavid.com. We've got all kinds of programs there, webinars going on. All of our 11 books are there. And if you want to do some work, you know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, Skype, and it works incredibly well everywhere. We have clients from all over the world. So if you're ready to go to that next level, go to talkdavid.com, send us an email, and we'll get it all set up.
Yeah, love that. And I've been on Dave's website, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'm actually like amazed how much you actually do, David. You know, sometimes I can barely just like wake up in the morning and I see that website. But yeah, honestly, yeah, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there, David. Thank you so much for your time again, David. Really, really enjoyed that. And I'll speak to you soon, my man. Okay. See you later, brother.